Welcome to the Story Truth Mine. Here there be spoilers. If we want to understand a world where every image and photograph can be a fake, altered and distorted by increasingly sophisticated AI engines like Chat GPT, Gemini, or Sora, all we need to do is look back to the days of the Portraiturist. Everything today is starting to look less real. The internet used to be a biased sample of reality, just pictures of the most photogenic moments of your life. But real moments nonetheless. Then it was a subtly improved version, with a blurry image artificially refocused or an annoying person in the background removed. And next, it was the good smile borrowed from one picture and exported to another, a feature I desperately need. Or maybe it was a filter slapped on. But now it's a manufactured reality. AI can take off that 20 pounds I can't lose. It can remove the bags under my eyes. It can create an altogether fake background without the benefit of even a poorly rigged screen. And it can even make a completely new person who doesn't resemble me at all or flip my gender. But believe it or not, we've been here before. Never at this scale, but prior to cameras, we had portraits, and portraiturists were no more bound to reality than an AI image generator like Gemini or Sora. So I want to explore the pressure that portraiturists could have faced to paint these pretty little lies, examine the conditions under which honesty could prevail, and see whether we should fight for truth or just throw in the towel. Thankfully, such a world has already been imagined for me. In this scene near the start of Modesitt Jr.'s industrial fantasy novel Imager, Rhenn is a journeyman portraiturist being lectured by his master for painting too honestly. That's not an acceptable portrait, Rhenn. Without Factor Masgale being present, I'd been working on the detailing of his crimson and gold brocade vest, a vest that for all its richness had seen better days. Not that the portrait would show that. Sir, you can't do that with the eyes. But that's the way the Factorius looks. Exactly the way he appears. Incautious as the statement was, coming as it did from a journeyman portraiture artist to his master, we both knew that the portrait was far more flattering than the reality of Mascale Factorius, one of the more junior yet least self-effacing factors in the city. It is not the way he looks, replied Master Cagliostro. Not to himself, and not to those who patronize his establishment, and certainly not to his family. The problem was not with my eyes, but with those of Master Cagliostro, for his had become a slave to his desires for influential patrons, rather than lenses of artistic impartiality. You do not paint a man with deep-set, beady eyes, even if his eyes are as hard and as tiny as those of a shrew, Cagliostro went on. That is, if you wish to remain a portraiture artist in El Excelsius. Without satisfied patrons, even if you become a master, you will not remain long an artist. You will not become a master because I certainly cannot support or lend my name to a portraiturist who is insensible to the self-images of his potential patrons. Then, Master Cagliostro, I replied, gently setting my brush on the edge of the oil tray. How am I to comply with the dictates of the guild? What of the goal of artistic precision? Artistic precision, my dear Rhenn, is the goal of obtaining the precise image that will please the patron. The first thing I find to be interesting is that there even is a guild rule about artistic precision to break down. It's not like pictures where technology used to only let us photograph reality, and now it's being opened up more and more to possible ways to distort reality. It's always been physically possible to paint a person as more beautiful than he or she is. Well, not by me because I can't draw, but people who can draw and paint, they've always been able to paint someone as more beautiful than he or she is. But some portraiturists must have believed that either it was morally better to paint people realistically, or that it was actually better for business for portraiturists overall to be known as painting truthful images. In a way, a painting's more valuable. An image, a picture, is more valuable if people know it's real. And that idea that reality is better than distorted images was able to be implemented and enforced because El Excelsius has a guild system, a mandatory union for people of each trade. And therefore, if you want to sell portraits in El Excelsius, you have to be part of the guild. Other people can paint, including a group that I believe was called the Representationalist, but they can't sell their paintings, and thus the guild is able to ensure that the vast majority of paintings are under their control and can create the rule that Rhenn admires. If there were an incredibly powerful content creators union, maybe they could create a similar rule, but the closest analog we actually have is probably the platforms themselves. A platform like YouTube or TikTok or Instagram could refuse images and videos that were too edited onto its program. It could decide that it's better to have a reputation for reality than to feature the prettiest AI-generated images. But even if a powerful creators guild or platform did create such a rule, we have to ask, would it endure? Or would it be eroded, like the guild's dictate of artistic precision was being eroded? Well, I think there are two main reasons why the guild's rule is collapsing. The first is that the boundaries of such a rule are hard to define. Surely Rhenn is allowed to paint a smile on the face of a patron, even if the patron usually isn't smiling. And maybe he's allowed to paint a person as though it's their best possible day and they're in the best possible light. And he is allowed to change the background to feature a chair he never saw them sit in. But is he allowed to firm up their jawline a little bit to mimic what they looked like before they put on some weight? Is he allowed to improve their posture? How much can he change their eyes? So the line is kind of blurry, and a blurry line is hard to police. This interacts with the second factor. There's a strong financial incentive to make people look more beautiful when one's craft depends on pleasing the perceptions of those who pay. And so naturally the most financially successful portraiturists are those who cheat the line the most. And they then wield power within the guild. They make donations. They have the most junior masters that they're training who become real masters. And so consequently, their preferences help shape future interpretations of guild rules. So eventually, the goal of artistic precision is whittled down to nothing. So what if Instagram or YouTube or TikTok were to create a rule banning the use of AI to make people more beautiful? Can you think of a version of that rule that they could police? Or would it be too difficult to tell if it was being violated? Would the rule cover too much? Would I be in trouble under your ideal rule? As you may have already noticed, this background is fake. I liked the room I used to be in better, so I took a picture of it before I left. This bookshelf's real, and it still sits behind me, but the wall behind it is currently a pale, sickly green, not chosen by me. So I used a green screen in Google Meet to replace the new wall with my old background. And then I upped the sharpness of the video to hide the fuzziness where my head meets the green screen. And then I ran the audio through Adobe's podcast audio enhancer to get rid of the worst of the room noise from my untreated walls. Is that okay, or is that how the reality warping that we want to get rid of starts? And are the financial incentives just too strong? Would bigger creators who make a living off of their videos be willing to work on a platform that stopped them from artificially enhancing their appearance? Would they be able to retain attention as well if they weren't artificially beautified? Would a platform that restricted them be able to compete against its peers? Maybe some platforms, some use cases should allow AI. Maybe some should allow it in a limited fashion. And then maybe certain ones, perhaps dating apps, should be required to be completely unimproved, unaltered by AI. Let me know what you think the ideal rule would be in a comment, or if there should be no rule. I hope you've enjoyed your time in the Story Truth Mine. You are welcome back anytime.